John Winchester. Sean Sansel.
Here.
Kelly Lee.
Here.
Charlie Robinson.
Here.
Lucretia Free. Tom Bereski.
Present.
Frank Santa Cruz.
Here.
Ann Berber.
Present.
John Bernal.
Here.
Frank Fry.
Here.
Bill Schlesinger.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next one, approval of meeting summary of January 23rd, 2024.
Ed Herbert, I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes as written. Thought they were very well done.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Against? Okay, it's passed. Moving on to road repair update, Jason Boley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. We are happy to present our update for this month for our fiscal year 24 pavement preservation and road repair program. Starting off with our substantially complete projects thus far in the year. You can see that list is still at where we were last month, but we do have a couple on the ongoing project list that are going to quickly move over to that substantially completed list. And that includes the Northeast Mill and Pave project. So the contractor is complete with work. They are substantially complete as of this past week. They're working on final cleanup and punch list activities currently, with all of that work expected to get wrapped up here in this week or early next week. The Southwest Mill and Pave project is also rapidly moving toward completion. We're expecting it to be entirely complete here in the next couple of weeks. They're starting to work on the utility adjustments now. And so that job should also be moving into that substantially complete column here within the next couple of weeks. Our Costa Dobes and Catalina Mill and Pave project, that's our big hard bid project for the year. That's well underway at this point. They have paved La Cholla Boulevard last week. They're currently working on Overton Road this week. And then they will be moving on to Camino del Oeste and Golder Ranch in the next couple of weeks, as well as a couple other roads on that project as well. So that is on track. We're expecting completion on that project toward the beginning of April, toward early April. That's the expected completion date for that. The Sierrita Mountain Road project is also moving quite nicely. They're currently working on the widening portion of that project, so the capital improvement portion of it. The header curbs have been recently poured, and right now we're moving towards paving on the entire job in the middle portion of March is when that's expected. So really ramping up activities on both parts of the job, so the widening and the mill and pave project here in the early portion of next month. And then the last ongoing project before we keep moving, the Pitcher Rocks Northwest area project is also well underway. The contractor on that job has performed the micro seal work on Rudisill Road, Pitcher Rocks Road, and Manville Road, with striping occurring later this week on all of those roads. They'll be moving on to the fog seal portion of that project here next week and getting that entire project wrapped up probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks or so. Which brings us to that Central Southwest project, which was the last one on the ongoing projects list. So this is just started getting moving. The contractor is expecting to begin the fog seal work in the area off Contractor's Way starting next week. And then that'll be followed by Irvington Road later in that week, and then Aerospace the following week after that. So it'll move along quite quickly and move very efficiently through these different roads, with micro seals to follow after those fog seals, and then striping shortly after that. So even though it's just beginning, we do expect this project to be moving towards substantial completion well within the next month and a half or so. Another project, the Linda Vista Terrace Mill and Pave project, it says awarded. It is getting ready to start as of tomorrow, so very quickly moving into that in progress column. They'll be doing utility lowering tomorrow and paving later this week, so it'll be a very, very quick project with work expected to only take a few weeks. So that'll be moving along quite nicely. The Tanque Verde Surface Treatment Project has also been awarded. This was awarded to Southern Arizona Paving. They're expecting to do that work toward the late March, early April time period, so not quite as quick on the start, but also coming up right around the corner very quickly as well. And this does include a lot of fog seals up in the subdivisions off Bear Canyon Road, as well as a few over off of Tanque Verde Road as well. The Heritage Hills Mill and Pave project, so this has also been awarded. The expected start on this is next Monday. So it's also another very, very fast start date on this project. The contractor is expecting to do utility work starting early next week and then paving toward the middle of the week even. So this project will also probably by next meeting be nearing that substantial completion column already. And then the last project to talk about for this fiscal year is the Foothill Surface Treatment Project. So this has also been awarded. This was awarded to Southern Arizona Paving for $1.079 million. This project does include roads such as Swan and parts of Thornydale and parts of Orange Grove Road, as well as several subdivisions for surface treatment work. And the contractor is expecting to do that work in the late May, early June time period. So this will be one of the latter projects of the year to be completed. So that's a lot. So what about the entire program overall? Program status, what we're looking at, you can see that since our last meeting, the pie chart has lost several colors, which is very encouraging at this time of year. A lot of stuff in that complete column. Majority of work is in construction at the moment, but like we mentioned earlier, a good portion of that is going to get moving into that completed column here very shortly, with the awarded column there in gray moving quickly into construction for the most part prior to the next meeting. So, as always, you can view the status of all of our projects and roads at the Road Repair Preservation Project map. Last month I had mentioned that this map was getting updated. It is still in the process of being updated, so it's not quite there yet, so you'll see some lagging in terms of things getting updated, but we do anticipate within the next several weeks, hopefully, that this map will be back to being updated regularly and having all the statuses regularly updated. And so with that, I will open to any questions.
Madam Chair?
Yes, John.
Question, Jason.
Yes, John.
For you or for Catherine, but on Sierrita Mountain Road, how was the difference or decision made about a capital project and a pavement preservation project on the same stretch?
You're talking in terms of the financial split, or?
Yeah.
I can answer that if you'd like,
Yeah,
Jason.
go ahead.
So the funding for the capital portion of that project is from our legacy impact fee program. So we adopted the new impact fee program in 2020. We still had balances in all the various impact fee areas. We went through a selection process to figure out what was eligible in those areas and execute a project. It happened that Sierrita Mountain Road was the selected project for that impact fee area. We also had that coming up on our pavement list. We actually delayed the pavement project a couple years just so we could do them together, because we know with our more remote projects, they cost more if we're mobilizing twice. So we had started the capital one, and it just happened to also hit our list, and that's why we combined them. The contract itself is split into the items that are pavement preservation and the items that are related to capital. So from an accounting perspective, it's kept separate.
I didn't catch that. So was one contractor doing both? Is
One
that-
contractor
Correct,
doing
yeah.
both.
One contractor doing both.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
for-
Madam Chair.
Okay.
Jason, thanks for the briefing. On the central and southwest surface treatment,
Yeah,
Aerospace Parkway, is that going to be the whole length of Aerospace Parkway?
correct. That's the whole length of
And
Aerospace Parkway.
what are the tentative dates for that?
That would be, the fog seal work is planned for the 11th and 12th of March.
11th and 12th of March, okay.
And then there'll be striping probably
Correct?
a week or so after that.
Right. So everything's been awarded, correct?
Correct.
We got any money left over?
Always asking the question. I like
Hey, you
it.
know me, man.
So, as we were seeing going throughout the year, we did have several jobs come in under our engineer's estimates. So we do have a little bit of funding that has been accumulated because of that, to the tune of about $1 million, which is a pretty good savings for the year. And so we had discussed previously a little bit of kind of rolling out some options to kick around of what might be good. And so what's been decided is that the funding savings for this year would go towards the Arivaca Road repair, which has been hanging out there for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
And so the great thing about this is it doesn't affect the future schedule for any of the other projects coming up either. So it's kind of the ideal time to get this taken care of.
On the Arivaca Road one, so you still have that whole, the road bed, you still having issues with that? I mean, that was part of that whole Arivaca Road.
Yeah,
issue
this
to
is
begin with.
from
Couple years ago.
a couple years ago, correct?
So it's to fix those
Yeah,
things
this
that
would be
went-
to repair the areas that are
Okay.
hanging out there currently. There's potential as well, funding savings to come in from other projects closing out as well if they don't hit the bid number. Unfortunately, those dollars probably aren't going to be realized till the either May, beginning of June, and at that point, it might be too late to actually put together another supplemental project beyond that. So
All right, can we roll that amount into next year then?
that question's above my pay grade, so.
So Catherine?
So that's a great question. The answer is not very easily. So our budgets were put in for fiscal year '25. A month ago is when we submitted our budget request, and that included the $24.1 million that we had in earlier board memos dedicated to pavement for fiscal year '25. So that's really going to be as much capacity as we have for spending next fiscal year. It has not fully gone through all of board approvals for budget, obviously, but from the department, when we're cut off from making changes, that date has already passed. So that's why I say not very easily, and it's all very much timing of how late in the game we can make changes.
Okay,
So, I mean,
yeah, understood.
generally, we can't add things to next year's program without an official budget adjustment approved by the board.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a question or follow-up. Could you put together a contingent bid that once we find out how much money that we have available, ready to go, late May, early June? And that way you can obligate the money this year? Is that feasible?
It's all about when the money is spent. So if the
Right.
construction activity, even if we sign the contract June 15th, if that work is executed after July 1, it hits our fiscal year '25 budget.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Jason? Okay. Thank you, Jason.
Perfect, thank you.
Up next, RTA Next. Ms. Skinner?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Catherine Skinner, the Director, Transportation for Pima County, giving the monthly update on RTA Next. So, last month we talked about how much there was to do to get that RTA Next program out the door, ready for public involvement. And the RTA board, who is having the conversations at this point, it's not really at the technical management committee or the citizens advisory committee level. These are conversations happening at the RTA board level. They have scheduled some extra meetings because they know that there is a lot to discuss. So their goal now is that at the May RTA board meeting, they have a plan ready to move forward for public comment. So last week on the 22nd, the board did meet, and they had outlined 5 different discussion areas that had come up where there is a lack of alignment, let's say, between the whole board, and it needed more discussion. So those 5 items were discussion and direction on the amount of future RTA Next revenues to be set aside as reserves for economic or inflationary contingency. So we've talked about there's the contingency that is the overlap between RTA 1 and RTA Next, which has $40 million already within the plans that have been discussed. And then there's also that potential, do we need an economic contingency for uncertainties in the overall economic conditions over the next 20 years. The second item that they discussed was the direction on the amount of future RTA revenues to be identified as reserves on the RTA Next ballot and set aside for debt service for the 20-year life of the plan. So debt service is setting aside some money there allows them to bond and accelerate projects earlier in the program potentially, as opposed to waiting until they've collected those taxes to execute work and contracts. The current RTA 1 had $100 million for that debt service amount. And so they've been discussing what's the appropriate target for debt service in RTA Next. The third item was discussion and direction on whether any portion of the categorical funds for safety and or active transportation element should be named on the RTA Next ballot as safety or active transportation projects at this time, or whether to leave them unobligated to ensure maximum flexibility for future needs during the 20-year life of the plan. So this has been an area of great debate. RTA 1 did not name specific projects within the, what we're calling now active transportation or safety. Back then it was referred to as bicycle and pedestrian and greenway improvements, intersection improvements, but there are essentially a lot of overlap between those two categories, between RTA 1 and RTA Next. So RTA 1 did not specifically name projects. However, there were maps that were included that outlined some roads that would potentially get these bike lane improvements or sidewalk improvements. It was not within the ballot language line by line, those projects. So that's part of the conversation is, do we want to provide certainty on these projects, or do we want to leave it open to committees over the next 20 years to make the decision of where that funding should go? The fourth item was discussion and direction on whether federal or state funds allocated to Pima Association of Governments may be requested to be used for any element in the RTA Next plan. So as you may recall, at the last meeting, I discussed a proposed hybrid plan that had been put forth that included $75 million of regional non-RTA funds that would go towards this active transportation and safety element. There's, again, great debate. Do we lock in and say we're using these regional funds that are non-RTA tied to RTA projects, or do we leave it open to future committees deciding where those funds should be spent? The $75 million amount is a little less than 12% of the regional funding that will come the last 15 years of RTA Next. So it's not a significant portion, but it is a portion. The fifth item was discussion and possible action to make additional refinements to the CAC TMC draft RTA Next submitted options. They actually didn't have time to discuss that at last meeting. It was on the agenda, so that will be covered in future meetings. So they had about a 2-hour meeting. They discussed these things at length. Ultimately, no action was taken. However, one big item that has been swirling around and was a main topic of conversation at RTA Board, it has also been the subject of many news articles over the past few weeks, was a discussion at the Tucson Mayor and Council, stemming from a memorandum from City Manager Mike Ortega. The city had undertaken a fiscal analysis to look at they have a few different tax initiatives out there to really get a handle of how much revenue they see coming in. Well, that was extended to looking at an RTA Next style tax. How much would the city of Tucson anticipate from that type of tax? And there is a lot greater receipts of what they would calculate that they would get revenue-wise if they went it alone versus existing plans that have been discussed at RTA board, how much would be going to the city of Tucson. So that's been a big subject of debate and conversation. The RTA has moved forward, and they're getting an update of their fiscal analysis for RTA Next. That should be in by the end of March or April-ish, that will look at a revised estimate for the 20-year plan. As you may recall, right now they're working with a pessimistic fiscal outlook. That's what they decided between a pessimistic baseline and optimistic. They're going with the pessimistic, and that was at a $2.34 billion collection over 20 years is what the estimate was. However, as was noted in the conversation from the city manager and mayor and council, a lot of the assumptions that were used in early RTA Next assumptions were prior to 2023. Therefore, they were a lot more pessimistic about hitting a large recession in 2023. Now we know that wasn't realized, so hence the higher estimates in what the city produced. With that, I will say there are a few meetings upcoming. They are not having a meeting in March, but there are two in April. April 4th and April 25th are the next two RTA board meetings, and then they have a regularly scheduled meeting in May. I will offer to John Bernal. I don't know if, as I said, the technical management committee has stopped being at the forefront of discussions. It's up to the RTA board, but if there's anything you'd like to add, please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think they maybe recently remembered we were around. Just yesterday, we got an email from the RTA asking the Technical Management Committee members to weigh in on two subjects. They want to hear from us on the economic uncertainty topic that Catherine reported on, and on the debt service topic. Only those two for some reason. And by the way, those two currently have allocations in the plan of $177 million. So it's substantial, and I think the reason there's so much debate about whether to have this level of set-aside, if you will, is that there's projects that could still be added with that amount of additional revenue. But I think the ongoing issue is, as Catherine mentioned, that the city is having to rationalize giving up as much as perhaps $640 million over 20 years. If they were to go it alone, that's how much more they realize they believe. The only other observation I'll make is on this whole topic of economic uncertainty and inflation, it's true we really didn't anticipate everything very well in the RTA 1. What instead was done, which has been done already on this list of projects, on the corridor projects, is to have contingency amounts included in their estimates. This is supposed to be different than that. Those projects, they've taken a shot at the contingency, but this is the overall program, and I honestly am not, as one individual, not convinced that that's something we should be doing, is adding a $100 million unspecified chunk in the ballot that goes before the public. But that remains to be seen. But, yeah, as Catherine says, quite a bit of work yet to be done. More, reporting coming, although getting into May, as Catherine mentioned, is pushing well into some of the public involvement period that was originally contemplated. So I could see, and yet there has been no adjustment to the targeted election date. They're still talking May of 25. So we'll see if that holds. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Does anyone else have any questions for Catherine or John?
I do, Madam Chair, thank you. So Catherine, you mentioned discussions within the city of Tucson, and they floated the idea of having an election in July for a sales tax specific to the city. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was a different discussion item on their mayor and council, but that has also happened recently.
So then is the RTA board and the PAG, have they discussed yet what they would do if the city of Tucson went forward with that and it passed?
That
Has
was
there
not
been any
a,
discussion yet?
I don't recall that as a topic from last week. Do you, Paul, or?
No?
Okay, I didn't think so.
There was quite a bit of lecturing from the smaller communities to the big city of Tucson about being regional partners.
Yeah.
That's really what it came down to in the discussion.
There's a lot of
Moving
discussions yet
parts.
to happen.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I had one, Madam Chair. I think 1 or 2 meetings ago, you had mentioned, I think the county and city both were looking at adding a maintenance funding component to RTA Next, and I guess what we're seeing out of the RTA is that they don't seem inclined to take that up. Where does that sit right now in your view?
Well, it wasn't one of the discussion topics. I would say in general, it seems off the table. It wasn't included in some of the earlier proposals that the city had put forth, even though it continues to come up in conversation. So we do have some idea of what the costs may be, but in terms of where you would be allowed to spend it, that continues to kind of be a moving target. In terms of their recent meeting that they had last week, there was some guidance that seemed to indicate that RTA Next funds couldn't be used even for capital maintenance on RTA 1 projects. That's not a legal opinion, I don't think at this point. It was just in the agenda notes. Earlier conversations had said, you know, RTA Next cannot be used for general maintenance activities. It can't be used for crack filling or potholes or any of that. It could be used for what they were considering capital maintenance, which is either the 2-inch mill and repave or reconstruct. So right now, it doesn't seem like that's getting a lot of energy from RTA board.
Madam Chair, Catherine, I did have one question for us. The city of Tucson named a lot of their individual safety projects, I believe. Did we do the same or not?
We did do the same. The RTA board requested that from all the jurisdictions, and those were submitted and included in the meeting that would have been held about a month ago. So most of the jurisdictions did submit something. Marana kept theirs open to just things to be identified in the future without a dollar amount. And so we had included a variety of both intersection projects and then the more bicycle pedestrian projects.
I have one more question, Madam Chair and Catherine. Is this working, or can you hear me? Mm-hmm. So besides the fiscal impact and their analysis that the city had done, was there any other reason given by the city that they would pull out of the RTA Next?
You know, at the RTA board meeting, I wouldn't say that it's characterized as we're going to pull out exactly. It has been a continued discussion point of we need to see a certain amount of investment within the city limits to make it a wise investment and something that Mayor Romero would be able to get behind, is how I understand it. And that's really part of the struggle. This new fiscal analysis complicated that and kind of exaggerated what that potential imbalance is. But at this point, I think that from my perspective, the RTA board is trying to work through all these items with the goal of having agreement and moving forward with a program.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Madam Chair, I got one more. So you also discussed, Catherine, I think it was on point 1 or 2, leaving the other elements like the safety element named or unnamed. So would that mean then the jurisdictions, it would be a continuous trying to get money in a year or in a 5-year period for things because, the different, within Pima County, I know we've got some, we got 2 safety named projects right now down in the Green Valley area. I think Sarita's got one. I know they've got projects, are the identified projects. So it's basically going to be if it's unnamed, is it going to be, last person standing or what, as far as, what jurisdiction and what safety element or what project, what bike lane, what sidewalk, what thing is going to be funded? How's that going to work?
So I can speak to how it worked in RTA 1. So in about 2015, 2017, so it's been quite a number of years, they basically, because we'd realized the Great Recession really affected the amount of money that was going to come under RTA 1, they stopped allocating funds on a yearly basis to the categories. But prior to that time, there was usually an annual call for projects. And in that call for projects, it was identified by category how much funding was available. So it might be $5 million for active transportation that year. It might be $10 million because they can look at the long game, and sometimes you can spend that money much more quickly early in a program. And so then it became a competitive process where each jurisdiction puts in applications. Typically, it goes through the committee structure of, the Transportation Improvement Program Committee, Subcommittee, the Transportation Planning Committee, Technical Management Committee, ultimately to the RTA Board for approval and inclusion with IGAs and in the budget. So it was an annual competitive process.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll have Ed Berberg come up and talk about the letter to the Board of Supervisors.
Actually, if this is on, I'd like to talk here if that's all right.
Sure.
That way I can refer to the letter and what have you. So by way of background, the committee's been working on looking at revenue options for transportation since early last year, based on priorities that the committee identified. And we looked at different options. In the last meeting, we talked about drafting a letter to kind of share our point of view with the Board of Supervisors. And I volunteered to write that letter. I did so, but I worked with Paul, Deputy Director Paul, and worked with John Burnell. So what you're seeing as the draft is a result of those consultations. But also, I asked Paul to go ahead and make sure we got the staff input. And so I think we have some good input there. One thing I will say about this letter is the committee can say some things that staff can't say sometimes, like how they're pressured given the reduced revenue that they're getting over time, and the problems we're facing as a result with our being able to respond to residents who have concerns, just like we as members of the committee do. So the letter was drafted with that background in mind and that input. And I hope captures the sense of the committee that we would ask for an earmarked tax to help with transportation needs beyond what we're getting right now. We just face so many needs across the county and they're not being met. So the letter asks that the board consider a sales tax at either 1/4% or 0.5%, bringing in $25 million or $50 million. We don't say it has to be one or the other. We're leaving it up to them. Clearly, we have noted in the letter that it's preferable to have the $50 million given the requirements that we've faced and that we see out there on the horizon. So last but not least, now we don't want to enter the quagmire that's going on right now with RTA. We want to let the Board of Supervisors know that if for some reason that doesn't work out, here's what we'd recommend. So we're not stepping in that arena. We're staying back from that arena and the controversies that are going on. For those who have been reading the paper, there is controversy going on. And there's no assurance that RTA will go one way or the other at this point. So this positions us, if RTA and the voters don't want to go with it, to have the county consider some funding going forward. So, again, trying to step back and be as neutral as possible and let everything play out that's playing out right now with RTA. So anyway, with that background and those comments, I open it up for comments from the committee members as to any revisions, suggestions, or what have you, which we would be happy to do at this point.
Madam Chair. Okay, so so in your conclusions, Ed, with the sales tax revenue, so I'm going back to page 14 of the white paper, and when we discussed this a number of months ago, we see the treasurer's roll with the county general excise tax. It would basically be put into the general fund, and it could be used for things other than transportation. I'm looking at this table on page 14, so we cannot do a specific county transportation excise tax because we have more than 400,000 population in Pima County. So that only gives us the Regional Transportation Authority excise tax left, which is RTA next. Is that a correct assumption? Or would that be something different?
Well, RTA Next is only using 0.5%, so that leaves the other 0.5%, and I'm not sure we have to do it under that. I'd have to defer to Paul related to that.
Come on down, Paul.
You generally have it right. I think we would need to seek a formal legal opinion.
Okay.
So whether we would be able to identify 100% of said sales tax for transportation and still be within the framework of the law allowing that to happen, we would have to have that determination made by attorney's office for sure. Traditionally, it would be a portion for transportation and a portion for other activities at the board's discretion.
Okay, so right now, we just don't know.
Correct.
Okay. The second item,
Getting back to that, though.
okay,
I don't know any reason why we couldn't put a qualifier in there saying, this would be an appropriate step to move forward to get the attorney's input.
yeah, I definitely agree with that, Ed. Yeah. Yeah, so we could direct, we could ask the board to direct the county attorney.
And it would be
Or-
appropriate to do it sooner than later.
Right. And so, yeah, so I would add that qualifier in there then.
Okay?
So during our discussions over the last year, we also talked about using general fund money to pay for some portion of the Transportation's Department budget. And I know I disagreed with some of the findings in the white paper, specifically towards that, and I think the big thing was, well, other counties aren't doing it, so we probably shouldn't do it either. Well, just because other counties don't do it, doesn't mean it can't be done. Okay? I'm not sure what the budget is for the Transportation Department is for administrative costs like personnel, and then the benefits that go along with it, but, if we could use road repair fund for that and then use our HERF VLT for road repair. Catherine, what do you have? Approximately 200 employees in Department of Transportation?
We budget for 190 employees.
190? Okay, so let's give it a ballpark of $1 million, okay, for payroll and benefits.
Oh, like what do we pay for that? It's,
Yeah.
our personnel portion of the budget is $15 to $16 million.
$15 to $16 million?
Yeah.
That includes benefits and
All the
that stuff.
benefits
All
are
the
included
the
in
whole
their.
HR thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, if that's a substantial amount of money on an annual basis, that could go a long way to speeding up road repair, and the road repair and road preservation program, and also just basic maintenance of the roads too. So I would really like to see in this letter to the Board of Supervisors that we consider using the general fund to pay for the administrative payroll budget or benefit stuff for the Department of Transportation. We've got a pretty large budget in Pima County. We use it for a lot of different things. There may or may not be a traditional use of property tax and then the sales tax revenue that we get back down. What we get from the federal government is per person. So that $15 or $20 million could go a long way. So I would like to see something added in here to just take it into consideration to have that slice come for the Department of Transportation to come out of the general fund.
Tom, I think what you're saying is they should be, Department of Transportation should be treated like other departments that are funded from the general fund.
Yeah, and so when we had you're right, so when we had, I can't remember, our finance director here, different departments have different funding streams and funding models. But I think just because transportation is a fundamental service that Pima County government provides to their citizens and their residents, then that is a portion that could come out, the payroll and the benefits, the payroll package come out of the general fund.
I'm not going to comment on that, but I'm going to ask other committee members to comment on it, because if it's the desire of the committee to put that in, I'd be more than happy to add it. We did have that discussion. It's not in our white paper per se, but we did have that discussion, as we had a discussion about impact fees, and we didn't have one of the options on impact fees in our paper either. So it's not out of bounds to put something like that in, but I'm just going to go around the table and ask each person on the committee, since we're close to having this put together, that one caveat, the first caveat that Tom suggested, I think is perfectly right. But why don't we start and go around the room? I'm not performing my previous role here. I'm performing a role of helping on this paper. So why don't we start with Kathy? And how, just sort of up or down, do you want that? And a paragraph could be added easily at the end here, saying if this doesn't work, here's another thing that we talked about. So Kathy, what's your sense?
Kelly.
I'm sorry, Kelly. Kelly Lee.
It's all right. I would be in agreement if the committee is in agreement to add it. I don't have enough background on what the general fund is used for and whether there is additional funding in the general fund to pay salaries for the Department of Transportation, so that unfortunately I don't have education on that. But if there is available funds in the general fund, it would be a great idea to free up that funding.
John?
I don't object to putting in some language, but I think I would not suggest that we ask for the entire amount. That's just too big a hit on the general fund, and we're going to turn off our board with any sentiment like that. I mean, they're always under stress to see where they come up with more general fund money, so I'm saying include it, but talk about a portion of it perhaps,
What-
not all of it.
What kind of portion are you thinking?
$5 million out of 15 or whatever Catherine mentioned, you know, even that's probably a lot, but I would keep it small.
Okay, Frank?
I think I would go with Kelly's perspective. It's a good idea.
Bill?
I'm not sure we're having about, we've had about a 5-minute discussion to add something that we spent months writing, correct? So I'm not sure. I think any option we add is an option. I don't know if there can be anything wrong with that. I frankly have some more questions, as I think Kelly alluded to, of how paying for staff is funded. So I guess my answer is I have no opposition to adding it.
Okay. Frank?
I think if there's a chance to open up more funding for what we're looking to open up the funding for, I don't see an issue with adding it with all the other concerns with the rest of the staff.
Sean?
I guess my comment will be more from a pragmatic standpoint, that I'd be more inclined to go with something that, like John mentioned, of a reasonable ask. Like, there's just not $15 million in the general fund, realistically. I mean, I think if there was, they might have considered that already. So some reasonable portion, I think is a reasonable ask, but I agree with John. It just seems off-putting to put in a recommendation that the entire DOT staff be funded out of the general fund.
Charlene?
So I would like to see if the staff has perspective on this topic. Are you willing to address this topic now, or would you like to think about it and address it? But what is your perspective on this topic?
I mean, I think it's a complicated topic, and
Yes.
the Department of Transportation has not historically been funded from the general fund. Part of that, there's a full history of memorandums that came out back when it was County Administrator Huckleberry on the topic of pursuing how do we find more transportation funding. So one of the challenges, I'll say, with using general fund is it's collected county-wide. So it's collected in the cities and in the towns, but the services that the Department of Transportation provides are only for the unincorporated county. So there's a potential of some disparity there. The general fund has a lot of obligations right now. And so I think to Mr. Bernal's point, asking for the full amount would probably be way too big of an ask. That's this is my very initial take. I think we're happy to discuss what makes up our entire $15.5 million personnel budget, because there's all the benefits in there. There's a lot of other aspects, and there could be potential when you look at it line by line to see a better argument for general fund support or not. But it's not just like this just goes to our paychecks, please. I know it sounds like a big number, but it's really anything that's personnel related. So when we have retirements and vacation payout or sick payouts, anything like that, those all become a part of the total.
And now from my perspective, I agree with John and those who have said we should look for a portion. Remembering last year, we asked for $13.5 million, and they looked at options to try to find that kind of money, and there were none of the options that were attractive to the board. So even finding $5 million, I think, is a stretch. And I particularly relate to what Catherine said. Unincorporated, the county is related to the salaries that are paid. And you can't expect the local jurisdictions to take a bite of that. So I think for those two reasons, it makes sense to have a paragraph stating a portion, and I would be happy to work with Paul to figure that paragraph out so it's all correctly stated, along with the caveat of having the attorney do the review that we talked about earlier. And with that, I think we're okay. But, with those two amendments, I would make a motion that we approve the letter as drafted with the two amendments being added in.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair, Ed was a little bit quick for me, but the only thing I wanted to suggest, by the way, is that we're adding these two tables or attaching these two tables about what we would do with 25 million more or 50 million more. What I liked in the notes was where we mentioned needs. If we could even allude to some needs in each of those areas, I think it would make that a little stronger pitch. That would be my only other suggestion, Mr. Chairman.
And I have a couple of small editorial things that I'll work with Paul on to make it easier for the board as they review this package when it goes forward. So do you want to call for a vote?
Okay. No other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes. And did you have anything else to add to that? That's it?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving into call to the audience, I'll turn it over to Gilbert.
First of all, in person, Jean Ann yet?
Oh, I'm back. Anyway, you listened to me last month, and I'm here representing Portillo Hills 2, along with these friends of ours.
Okay, so sorry, before you start, he's going to set a timer for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, Gilbert? Okay.
It's just short. It's just short.
That's fine. We just
Okay.
wanted to let you know.
Okay, I just wanted to talk to you again about getting our roads done. I heard Jason say there's $1 million left. Good, put it in ours. That would be really lovely. Don, I told you last time that Don Gibbons had been in that house across the street from us for about 29 years. Alma Shook was here last month, and she couldn't make it today. You know, they've been waiting for these roads all these years. Our part from Amelia all the way back to Camino Amelia, back to where the mine zone, has never had the top coat put on. Okay, so you did it, you worked on Esperanza Estates, and I understand some of the roads might have been as bad, but nothing has been as bad as from Amelia back to Camino Mayor. You know, they're in their 80s and 90s now. I think they've waited long enough to get our road done. I just don't understand why we can't get it done sooner than later. Another thing, I brought it up about the Esperanza Estates got done, and they stopped, and they came across into our subdivision right to Agradable. Why didn't I not go all the way to the back? I don't understand that. Tom tried to explain it to me, but I know nothing about roads. I don't know how they figure it out. I really don't care. I would just like to get ours done, plain and simple. We never got our last top coat put on. Just something to think about, please.
Thank you. And we will be providing a comment to you. I have Teresa Pippin.
Hello, my name is Teresa Pippin, and I'm a resident of Portillo Hills, too. We moved into the neighborhood about 4 years ago, and we are daily walkers, walk twice a day. Our dog demands it, so there's no getting around it. I want to first thank you guys, and I don't know if you're responsible or there are others responsible for the new curbing that we had in our neighborhood. We've had some curb repairs and made them more accessible for people who use walkers, and we've also had some sidewalk repairs that were buckled, and so I certainly appreciate that. I'd also like to thank Mr. Bresney for coming out and examining our roads, taking a little ride. There's a definite change when you enter the neighborhood and cross what Jean Ann discussed as the new paved area. When we first joined the neighborhood, we were curious as to why there were so many pebbles in the street. And then in talking to people who had been in the neighborhood for quite a period of time, like Alma, who is quite the woman, we were explained that the developer and I need to be corrected on this if I'm wrong, but this was the understanding that we got from people who have been in the neighborhood from the beginning, is that the developer paid for the completion of the roads, and for some unknown reason, they weren't finished. Now, I'm no road expert, but the little that I know about roads from living in other rural unincorporated areas, it appears we maybe have a road base. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but we maybe don't have our surface course. So I'm not here asking for maintenance or preservation or anything like that. I'm asking for a reclassification to be completed. And so, you know, when I think, Director Skinner, about your comment about needing to use your excess budget before the end of your fiscal year, I completely understand that, having worked in large corporations. I guess, and this is, I only estimated this sitting here based on my walking, that we have less than 2 miles probably of uncompleted road. I can see that every time it rains, we see the washes on the corners of our streets where it goes around the concrete curbing. Those are continuing to deteriorate. We are getting more and more potholes. You see it visibly every time. And when the street sweeper comes through, it just annihilates another, precious layer that we have. So as small as our need is, and I understand you guys have big needs to consider, we could probably be finished before the end of June. I'm estimating maybe less than 2 miles. I'd have to go home with my pedometer and my watch and walk it to know for sure. But it's not a big job, but it is a big thing to people who believe they paid for something, that they paid Pima County for something. And that's my ask to you today, is someone look back the 30 years and find out if I'm wrong, or what the people that have been there for all this time are saying is inaccurate. Because I know you have to have a basis for how you decide on what you do. Clearly you're not going, okay, that road. So if you can somehow reclassify us to being a project that needs to be completed and not maintained or preserved, that might help finish what we residents believe is something that we've paid for. So I don't know the cost per mile for a road anymore. I mean, I used to in another county that we lived in, but I know it's definitely not cheap. But even the dog in the neighborhood, Fred, our cutie little dog, has figured out that he can walk the tar to cross the street to not hurt his feet. So when you have as many seniors as we have to buy really thick walking shoes to cross the street because they're ankle turners. And so we just appreciate your consideration in figuring out how you get our small project moved to closer to the top of the list. And we'd love to be completed before the end of your fiscal year. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Stanley, is it Stanley? Yes.
Yes, as another member of the Portillo Hills 2 HOA, I believe that last meeting, our members laid out the need and the problems that we have. It's 31 years. Year after year, members of our HOA, at least a member, has been up begging, pleading that the road be completed. Each year we get an answer, there's not enough money. There's never enough money. My question is, will there ever be enough money? And if not, what are our alternatives? I realize that we're the tail end of the development, the tail end of the extension of this Esperanza, but we just don't want to be forgotten, and I'd hope the committee would take that into consideration.
Thank you. So I have a petition here. Is Bruce Inkman here to address this petition? Yes, yes.
Bonanza Avenue's petitions by Mr. Bruce Inkman for Bonanza Avenue residents. We attach a petition from 48 residents directly impacted by the failed condition of the Bonanza Avenue road surface between Snyder Road and its termination south of Gray End Place. It is inexplicable why a section of Bonanza Avenue was not resurfaced last year when all surrounding roads to the east were repaired. We watched the resurfacing work extend right to the intersection of the roads to the east were repaired. some or all residents of 4 subdivisions, Territory, Santa Catalina, Catalina Alley, Winchester Ranch, and Rancho Sierra, use Bonanza Avenue as their only road out of the neighborhood. In any case, Bonanza Avenue is in a failed condition and should have been resurfaced when adjacent roads in better condition were repaired. The current pavement condition index, PCI, ratings of 48 and 49 for Bonanza Avenue, south of Prospect Lane and north of Prospect Lane respectively, can't possibly be accurate as the calculated PCI of 27 for the north end of nearby Lason Lane is in reference. Transportation staff reported the 27 PCI rating. I'm sorry. District 1 in early June 2022. Oh my God. Finally, each resident who signed this petition was advised that the petition will be presented to both district supervisors as well as the appropriate contact from the Department of Transportation. It should be noted that many residents requested that both residents be allowed to sign or we try to restrict the petition to 1 line per address. We ask that you please give the local road issue the priority attention that it deserves. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have anything else for call to audience. We will provide a response to your concerns. Thank you. Future items for discussion. Does anyone have anything they would like to add to the agenda?
Madam Chair, it's not a future item. I just wanted to compliment Ed Verberg on keeping us focused on this letter that is finally getting finalized. A lot of good effort. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the discussions that we had before, we didn't really go into it in detail, was talking about the frequency of committee meetings, and I just wanted to open it up briefly for any discussions about how often we would like to continue having these meetings.
Madam Chair, so do we have a stipulation, and I don't have the bylaws in front of me right now, do we have a stipulation that we have to have 9 meetings a year, or we meet monthly, or anything like that?
So in the bylaws, we will have to revise the bylaws if we change the frequency of the meetings.
What's in there right now?
I don't recall exactly, but yeah, I just know that they talk about how often you have to attend meetings and how many you can miss.
Yeah, you can only miss, excuse me, Madam
3.
Chair, I'm sorry. You can only miss 3 meetings if you're a member.
Gilbert.
But the question is different, how many do we have to have?
Exactly.
My comment would be, and I was going to say anyway, but unrelated to that, is I think as long as we have a steady stream of residents coming to us, that's one of our main functions, and we need to consider that as to the frequency, whether it's monthly or every other month. As long as there's a forum, because I think that's not the main reason, but one of the big reasons that we were created is to listen to the concerns of the residents and share them as appropriate with the board members. So that would be my comment.
Okay.
Go back up a page, Gilbert. There we go.
Could you read that
Oh.
section to us?
Yeah, number of
Yeah,
meetings.
5B.
So
Yeah.
again, on 5B under meetings for the bylaws, number of meetings. The PTAC shall meet at least once each month unless a meeting is waived by a majority of the membership.
So right now, we meet every month, but we could say, we're not going to meet next month, basically is the way it, or
Madam
we
Chair.
do what we do in November, December.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's just what I was going to comment, is because of holidays, we skip a meeting in those 2 months. So we have done that in the past. It's caused no harm in terms of public input. So maybe if we don't have a lot on the agenda, we could take that in consideration in the future, that we can skip a meeting if we don't have enough that we should be paying attention to.
Okay. Anyone else with any other suggestions or?
Chair. Just, Madam Chair, I think just because of the RTA Next and all the rumblings going on, that having a monthly meeting would be good, just for education purposes and
Okay.
how it relates to pavement preservation and all, is my opinion. But as a mother with 2 children that are in school and, you know, we celebrate the holidays, it is nice to have one summer month off and December off, if possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions, comments, suggestions? Okay, I just wanted to have that discussion, so. Okay, so for now, the next meeting will be held March 26th. If you have any agenda items that you'd like to see put onto the agenda, please send it to Gilbert by March 8th.
And this way, email address, they can send it to btechadmin@pima.gov.
Okay?
Gilbert, on that one, I still get a non-deliverable when I send to that email address.
Do you have him blocked?
Probably. Jason does
I think Jason
anyways.
does.
As a safety net, you're still welcome to send me an email.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we're adjourned.